Hey there, my meaty friends. This is Reed, aka CarnivorousChef. If you remember the egg pudding trend of 2021, then this may look a little familiar. It's similar, but is really just a basic custard we've been making. This technique is super simple and can be done in many different ways. If you're lactose intolerant, you could do this with bone broth as well. If this video gets 100 likes, I'll make another custard video without dairy. Anyways, let's get started. For this base recipe, you'll need the following: whole milk, heavy cream, and eggs. In a mixing bowl, crack in 1 whole egg and 1 egg yolk. Once you get your eggs cracked in, add in 1 cup of whole milk and 1/4 cup of heavy cream. The last ingredient you'll need here is a pinch of salt. You'll use the salt even if you're making a sweet custard because season your food, please. Whisk this up and voila, a basic custard. Today I'm making a breakfast custard and a vanilla custard. For the breakfast custard, add in 2 tablespoons of grated Parmesan cheese and 2 tablespoons of sharp cheddar. Give this a whisk and set it aside before remembering to add in a pinch of extra salt and a little pepper. To cook this, we'll need to set up a bain-marie. Grab a deep baking dish and place a towel down to keep our cups from sliding around. For today's custards, I'll be using soup cups because I don't have any ramekins available. You could do this in any oven-safe container, honestly. Butter up your vessels just to make sure these bad boys don't stick. Ladle in your custard and drop in some cooked and crumbled bacon. Grab a kettle of hot water and pour in about 1 inch up the side of the dish. Let's carefully transfer this into an oven set to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and let it cook for about 30 to 35 minutes or until a toothpick inserted comes out clean. Now let's make this vanilla custard. Honestly, this one's just the base custard recipe with some vanilla extract added in. Super simple, right? Let's go through this one quickly so I don't bore you with the exact same thing I did 1 minute and 43 seconds ago. So to your base custard recipe, add in 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And that's it. Don't waste your B-roll either, so pour that water into your pan carefully. You just don't want water in your custard because it's custard and not watered. Now let's pull these out and let them cool down and rest for about 15 minutes. They should still be a bit jiggly, but not flowing with liquid. That's how you know they're perfect. This jello-like texture is what you're going for. Let's take this first bite for my Patreon community. If you're interested in joining and supporting the channel, the link is in the description below. Okay, the breakfast custard is f***ing delicious, and I'm already looking forward to make a similar version already. This vanilla custard is also fantastic. I've made custards before, but they had a pile of sugar in them in the past. No longer. Hey everyone, welcome to Down South Carnivore Episode 1. I wanted to use this series as an attempt to test my creativity and knowledge of food and combine that with the fact that I'm from the South and have eaten basically all the Southern food you can think of. The South includes a lot of vegetables and starches in their food, so there will be a lot of things that I won't be willing to do, but there may be a few things I'll throw in to surprise you. The goal is to keep it as carnivore or as carnivore-ish as possible. If you see me falling down the trail of cauliflower, mashed potatoes, or similar, please berate me in the comments. Today, I wanted to start with one of my favorite breakfast dishes in the South, which is biscuits and gravy. This typically consists of a buttermilk biscuit and topped with a white pepper gravy, which may or may not have breakfast sausage in it. So you probably want to know how I did this, so let's just jump into that and see what the recipe is. Alright, for the biscuit, I went with the same recipe I used for my English muffin, which was a 1-to-1 of pork rinds and eggs, and a little baking powder. Here I have 3 ounces of ground pork rinds, 3 eggs, and a half teaspoon of baking powder. Grab a fork or rubber spatula and mix all of this together. You'll be done mixing once all the pork rinds are hydrated and kind of look like this. Growing up in a southern home, you'd 9 times out of 10 see anyone cooking using a cast iron pan. You'd also probably see a jar of bacon grease somewhere nearby that pan. So since I'm trying to hit all the nostalgic points for myself, I'll be using this cast iron pan. And unfortunately, I'm out of bacon grease, so I'll be using a little bit of beef tallow. Now, you can place a ring mold if you want to, but in the middle of doing this, I just wanted to try to see what a freeform biscuit may look like and how it would work out, and to be honest, I like that look a lot better. It seemed to look a lot more like a biscuit than compared to the ring mold one. You want to let these bad boys cook for 5 to 6 minutes in total, and you want to flip them occasionally to keep them from burning. In this recipe, you should be able to get about 3 biscuits in total. This next part is optional, but I enjoy it for the flavor and plating. Take a few leaves of fresh sage and just put it into your hot oil and begin to fry it. The leaves will crisp up and it'll flavor your fat. Personally, in my gravy, I like breakfast sausage. Be on the lookout for the stuff that says country sausage because, in my experience, this has the least amount of additives and garbage in it. Place this into a pan over medium heat and begin to break it up. We want pretty fine crumbles here, so take your time and keep chopping it. Once it's finished, set aside and grab another cast iron pan, maybe something a little smaller in an attempt to reduce our cream. Put 1 pint of heavy whipping cream over medium heat and bring to a simmer. Whisk the... Alright, let's, how about a half pint of heavy whipping cream instead? Next, we want to whisk in 2 ounces of cream cheese to stabilize our gravy. Crack in a half teaspoon of black pepper or until it tastes right. If you've never had this before, a half teaspoon is probably a safe place to start, but I personally probably added about a full teaspoon to get it to the flavor that I wanted it. Put in about half your sausage and continue to reduce your mixture until your desired consistency has been reached. Salt this to taste. I didn't add any salt until the very end because reducing things increases the salinity of them from the evaporation of water. Alright, since I had some extra time spent cleaning up, my biscuits deflated a bit, but they still look pretty good. Split them in half and spoon over your gravy, making sure that you get sausage on every one. Alright, well, this one really took me back to my childhood. I haven't had biscuits and gravy in a while, well, maybe even about 3 or 4 years I haven't had it, but this was really just an epic treat and super nostalgic for me. The textures were on point, the flavor was 100% nostalgic. To make the Hollandaise sauce, you need to get 3 eggs and separate the egg yolks into a heat-safe bowl. Then you'll put a pan over medium-low heat and add 3 ounces of butter to it. Typically, Hollandaise is made with ghee, which is butter that has had the milk solids separated from it. Keep an eye on the butter because we do not want it to brown. Pour the melted butter into a heat-proof container. Next, bring a pot of water to a simmer for our double boiler. Place your heat-safe bowl over this double boiler that contains your egg yolks. Whisk your egg yolks until they have thickened and lightened in color. Once this has happened, slowly pour in your melted butter. Continue to do so until all of the butter has been incorporated. You should end up with a sauce that is thick and leaves ribbons behind whenever you pour it on top of itself. Next, add a squeeze of lemon juice, or about a teaspoon, and season with salt to your taste. Set aside for later. Add 1 cup of processed pork rinds and 2 eggs to a mixing bowl. Mix this together using a fork or a spoon. A whisk like this isn't ideal here, as you can see, it just gets clumped up in the middle and makes for a hard time. Next, add a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder and mix it in. Place a non-stick pan over medium-low heat. Add a little olive oil or butter to the pan to get that melting. Get a ring mold like this one and grease it up with your olive oil or butter. Now add 2 to 3 tablespoons of your pork rind mixture into the pan in your ring mold. Cook this for 5 or 6 minutes or until golden brown. Carefully flip it over as the top is still raw and could fall apart. Let the other side cook for another 5 to 6 minutes. Once it is done, it will have a sponge-like texture and will bounce back to the touch. Alright, for your poached eggs, get your same non-stick pan and clean it out. Place some water in it, put it over medium heat, and bring it to a simmer. Throw in a big pinch of salt to season the water. Now crack an egg into a small bowl or measuring cup and carefully pour it into your simmering water. Spoon the simmering water over the top of the egg yolk if it is exposed. Do this until it looks like the egg white has been cooked. Cook it for 3 to 5 minutes. Carefully scrape under the egg with a slotted spoon. It should release pretty easily, but it may be stuck. Flip this over and cook for another 1 to 2 minutes. Remove from the pan and let drain on a paper towel, and repeat this one more time. Alright, split your English muffin in half. Eggs Benedict usually calls for a Canadian bacon or ham, but I went with a fancy version instead and used prosciutto. I may or may not have had a little trouble with my poached eggs, but you can always just snap them in like this and they'll be perfect. Now pour over a little Hollandaise over each of these. I went a little extra fancy and added some smoked paprika for a little color and extra flavor. Well, it's only 9:30 a.m. and it's already 95 degrees, so why not make a sausage, egg, and cheese McMuffin? Huh? That doesn't sound hot at all. But seriously, I did ask y'all what y'all wanted to see from McDonald's for breakfast. And really, the majority was the McGriddle, but I'm gonna need some time to think about that to figure out exactly how I wanna make it. But for now, let's go ahead and make a sausage, egg, and cheese McMuffin. I'm very confident with that. I can get that done right now. So let's get it done. So the basis for this one is pretty easy. I've already made the muffin recipe before, so I've already got that going for me. And that's probably the easiest part of this whole thing besides the making of it, because otherwise it'll be a bunch of grease splattering all over my knees. But that's okay, it's worth it for this end product because I'm kind of excited about that. Spatula, fork. I'll use something else. That should be it. I have these pork rind crumbs. Usually I would do this myself, but I found that it's a lot easier to have something in the van good to go to make things like this. So I bought these. These are from Pork King Good. Never used them before. They're not a sponsor. I'm excited to see how they taste. Go ahead and make this muffin mix. Smell like pork rinds. Well, look at that. It tastes like it too. All right. I'm going to be eyeballing this, but I'll have all the written measurements down below. That should be good. To this, we'll crack in 2 eggs. Oh God. Then we'll add in a ½ a teaspoon of baking powder. Definitely not Drunks. Typically the pork rinds are going to be salty enough to not have to add any seasoning whatsoever. But if you find that your pork rinds are bland or you just want to add something to it, feel free to do that. These are pretty well seasoned. It tastes really good actually. Take your mixture, give that a little hot forking action. Just let that absorb. It'll take a little time. It'll sit there and it'll kind of thicken up. Let's go ahead and get all the other little things prepped up, like the sausage patty and the egg. For this recipe, I'll be using this Tennessee Pride breakfast sausage. Feel free to use whatever you want. This one is, I mean, it tastes really good. The only problem is it has all the like maltodextrin and stuff like that. I will eventually be making a recipe on how to make some good breakfast sausage with all the garbage in it. But for now, I don't have the time for that today or the will to sit in the heat to make that happen. So for now, I'm just gonna use this, and it's pretty damn good. I'm just gonna get a couple patties out of it. Well, it'd probably help if I turned the gas on. Oh, I don't even have it in there. This will produce a good bit of grease, and we'll use that to cook our muffin on. It was a bit too big, but it'll be okay. Well, since I don't have too many interesting things to say about sausage cooking, let's just get to the point. All right, these are done. All right, so I've seen a video of how McDonald's makes their eggs, and they have a big ring mold, and you crack an egg in. Yeah, just a little bit of water, and then you steam it. But I don't have a lid for this thing, but I do have a ring mold, little crazy guy ring mold. And they usually cook it in clarified butter over super low heat. So I'm gonna turn my heat pretty low. I'm gonna use the grease to do this. So I'm gonna just put this down, crack an egg. I'll help this along just a little bit by poking some little tiny holes in it. There we go. That'll work. Shouldn't take too long on the other side. Probably like 20 seconds at the most. Because I still want it to be kind of malleable and not super hard fried. In fact, this is a lot harder than they even get it to. But I think they also use parchment paper under it to keep it from doing this. But either way, it's okay. It'll still be good. Egg patty. We'll do one more. Yep. Alright, second egg's done. By the way, I added a trash can in this van, and it's probably the nicest addition I've done so far. So, I've done this before with the muffins, where I've used a ring mold to make it look nicer. And I don't remember the outcome, but I think the freehand one, where I just mush it down in the pan, might have looked better, but let's just go ahead and do a couple of them to see how they look. One with the ring mold and one without. So this stuff is pretty sticky. That's why I'm wearing gloves right now. I'm just gonna separate that into two pieces. Try to get it as even as possible. If you're really going to make this super legit, you would do this by weight. Just get the weight of the total dough you have and then just split it by two. And if I remember correctly, I think the one in the ring mold just didn't look as good. It was too perfect maybe, but I could be wrong. Because if you were doing a English muffin, this is how you would do it. You would be dough ball, kind of flattened already, and you would just put it down, and it would kind of get crinkly on the outside. Oh yeah. That's looking pretty good. It almost looks like the biscuits I made. Alright, whatever I said in the first one, I think I disagree with. I'm pretty sure I said like this one better. This one's gonna have a lot more rise to it just because it had a more chance to cook evenly on these edges. So it's gonna be a lot taller by the time it's done cooking. This one will remain pretty flat just because it didn't have a chance to have heat come up to the side of it. All we're waiting for now is for the center of the dough to be cooked. And after that, we can put this thing together. We'll call it on that one. You know what? In fact, I think what I'm gonna do is split it here. Let that griddle on one side. We have a nicely split muffin already. Yeah. Oh yeah, I think I like that. I kind of like that more. Cool, that works for me. I don't have to cut it either. And it's got pretty good rise on both sides. So it shouldn't take much longer after you flip it like that. Yeah, it's done. We can assemble this thing finally. All right, the assembly is pretty simple here. I'm gonna take our muffin, which is this is the one with the ring mold. Keep our top separate. I'm gonna take a slice of trash cheese, lay that garbage right on there. Follow that up with your sausage patty, and then finally your egg patty. And you'll top it. I don't know about you, but I think that looks pretty damn legit. Let's go eat this thing. I don't feel like sitting in this van anymore. We'll go to a bench real quick, so just give me 1 second. All right, let's give this thing a try. Now, I'm sure you know that this was probably going to be pretty easy to make. It's just a few simple ingredients that work well together. Usually if I get breakfast at McDonald's, I'll usually get this, but without the muffin. So it's just kind of nice to have something kind of similar. But that's it. McDonald's sausage, egg, and cheese McMuffin. Hey there, my meaty friends. This is Reed, aka CarnivorousChef. I know for a fact that everyone needs a treat from time to time. If you're not one of those people, feel free to let me know in the comments. But for the rest of you, throw a like on this video if you feel the same way. Whenever I go off and eat something that's way outside of the diet, I end up regretting it for a few days at a time. But what if I didn't have to? What if I could feel like I'm eating something that looks and tastes kind of like a cinnamon roll? I think I will. If you passed by a Cinnabon in your local mall recently and just had some full body convulsions to stop there, maybe it's time to try these. You don't have to sneak in to make these, but you can if you want to. Grab a bowl and magically add in 5 ounces of ground pork rinds. I suggest using the plain flavor here. Next up, add in 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder and fork that in there real good like. After that, grab 5 eggs. When you grab them, smack them onto a flat surface. This will breach the membrane of the egg, allowing you to open it up completely. Drop in the contents of all eggs into your pork rinds along with 1 teaspoon of your choice of sweetener, if you're using any. You're going to want to fork this pretty hard swiftly to get it combined. Once you have, set it aside to allow everything to absorb. Now, we need to work on the buttery cinnamon center. Take 1 stick of butter and melt it into a bowl in any way you can. Add in a pinch of salt along with 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Then, if you're using sweetener, add 1 to 1.5 tablespoons worth. Block the view of you mixing it from your camera while you mix it up. I set mine aside while I pulled out a baking sheet lined with a silicone baking mat. Pour your pork rind mixture onto it and spread it out onto a nice rectangle. Like always, you can be as meticulous with this part as you want to be, but just make sure it's rectangular at the end. Place this into an oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 176 degrees Celsius for 5 to 7 minutes or until the batter has just set. While that's in the oven, let's whip up this icing. Get a bowl, add in 2 heaping tablespoons of collagen, then 3 tablespoons of a sweetener of choice. Follow this up with a 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract, a small pinch of salt, and then 3 tablespoons of heavy cream. Try not to be too much in shock while you're whisking this. I was shooting in the dark just a little bit here, but I had a feeling it would work out. I just didn't think it'd work out this well. I pulled out my pork rind plate about 10 minutes ago and let it cool off so I could handle it. Also placed my butter mixture in the fridge for some reason and it hardened a little bit, but that's fine. Yours should be still rather liquidy if you left it out. Spread the butter and cinnamon mixture on top of this by hand. Leave about 1 inch on one end for rolling it up. Once all of it has been applied, start rolling it up. It may feel like it's not going to cooperate at first, but just keep going. The bigger the roll, the more steady it gets. Once you get to the end, press on it firmly for about 1 minute to make sure it stays together. When you're cutting this, just do your best to get even cuts. The recipe should yield 6 of what I'm calling normal size cinnamon rolls. But you can get 8 small cinnamon rolls, 4 large rolls, or even 2 burritos. Plate these puppies up and let's pour over our collagen frosting. I just went ahead and used all the frosting I had because I didn't want to sit there and eat it out of the bowl. I'm extremely happy with how these turned out. Let's take this first bite for my Patreon community. Whether or not you're using sweeteners here, I think you'll enjoy these. The form factor and texture are just a unique experience whether they're real or carnivore. Don't miss out on this one. Hey there my meaty friends, this is Reed, aka CarnivorousChef. It's morning time around here. I start my days off with a ½ liter of water, just to get the pipes moving. I'm pretty low energy as it is, so I tend to make a full pot of coffee in my pour over coffee pot. But you're here to learn how to make a carnivore breakfast pizza. For that, you're going to need some breakfast sausage. I prefer products that say country sausage because they typically have less ingredients in them. I cooked mine the night before to eat with a few eggs. I saved the rest in the fridge, so you can use leftovers if you want. For the crust, add in 1 ounce of pork rinds, 4 ounces of shredded low moisture mozzarella cheese. Try to go for the block, but if you're feeling lazy, a little tree bark isn't going to kill you. Crack in 1 egg, and finally about 8 ounces of your cooked breakfast sausage. Blend this on low for about 2 minutes or until you get a dough of this kind of consistency. No breakfast is complete without bacon. Grab 4 slices of some thick cut bacon and cut it into strips or dice it like I'm doing here. Feel free to use leftover bacon here as well if you happen to have it. It's mostly going to be a topping. Place your diced bacon into a pan set over medium-high heat and cook until well brown and a little bit crispy. Set aside and reserve that bacon grease. I'm going to use the grease in my cast iron pan to let the dough fry. Place this sausagey pizza dough into your pan and spread evenly. Make sure you get to the edges. Once you've gotten those clean edges, place this onto a burner over medium heat for about 7 or 8 minutes. In the meantime, let's get our sauce done. Set up a bain-marie and add about 3 ounces of cream cheese, a 1/4 cup of half and half, a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, a 1/4 teaspoon of granulated garlic, a ½ teaspoon of salt, and a pinch of dried thyme. All you want to do is give this the hottest whisking of your life until everything combines. This will be a thick boy sauce when it's done. set aside in the bain-marie while we check on our pizza crust. This is looking fine, but we need to get a bit of the grease out. Do that by using a paper towel. Place this into an oven set to 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 to 12 minutes or until the top of the crust is set. Now for the final topping. Poaching eggs is really simple. Place a saute pan over medium-high heat and bring about 1 inch of water to a boil. You'll want about 3 tablespoons of vinegar added to the pan to help keep the egg whites from going insane. Crack 3 eggs into a bowl. This is to ensure that the yolks won't break in the water. Use a spoon and make a little water tornado. Would that be a water spout? You can place this in 1 egg at a time if you'd like, but I like to put them all in at the same time. Once they're in, I like to gently scrape the bottom just in case some of the egg whites stick. To speed up the process, use your spoon to baste water onto the tops of the eggs. After 2 minutes, give these eggs a gentle flip and allow to cook for another 1 to 2 minutes. Remove from the water and let drain on a paper towel. Don't forget to season with a pinch of salt. Okay, our crust is out of the oven and we can finally assemble. Spread on an even layer of your sauce. You may have a bit more than needed, but that's okay. You can save it for later purposes. Sprinkle over a third of your bacon bits. Follow it up with about 2 ounces of shredded mozzarella cheese. And finish up with the rest of your bacon. Place this back into the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 13 to 16 minutes or until your cheese is golden brown. That is beautiful. Carefully scrape this to get it out of the pan. The final step is to lay down your poached eggs. Stab these with a sharp knife to let that yolk get all over the place. This pizza serves about 3 people or 1 average-sized person for their daily calories. Now that's a nice slice. For whatever reason, I think this is the crispiest carnivore pizza I've ever made. I don't know if the bacon grease had anything to do with it, but I also am not going to question it and probably use it every single time I make a pizza. See y'all next time.
Hey, how's it going? This is Reed, aka CarnivorousChef, and you're watching Down South Carnivore, the southern cooking show that nobody asked for and has the incorrect name in the intro. This week's video is chicken fried steak, which, as you can see in the intro, has a little lore from 1911. Its roots can be found in Texas and is absolutely delicious. How about we get started with our gravy? I still have yet to master a good gravy recipe on this diet, but I have some ideas that I'll bring up in another video soon, so look out for that. For now, let's get a pan set over medium-low heat and add a half cup of beef bone broth, 1 scoop of collagen, and a half cup of heavy cream. We want to basically reduce this until it is a thickened sauce, which took me about 14 minutes total, and even then it still wasn't quite where I wanted it, but it's good enough. Now that it's thickened, salt and pepper this to taste. Ooh, check out my shameless plug too. Now let's set this aside over the lowest heat you can to keep it warm while we take care of our steak. The steak choice is entirely up to you, but I do recommend something a little fattier and at least a choice cut of meat. Here I have a ½ pound of New York strip, which I want to trim up a bit and then cut on a sharp bias. I'm doing this because I want it to be as flat as possible beforehand. Take your fat trimmings and add them to a pan set over nearly low heat, but still between medium and low heat to begin to render the fat. I suggest throwing in a slice or 2 of bacon to render this fat as well. To pound the steak out, take a sheet of parchment paper or plastic wrap and place 1 piece of your steak on top, and then cover with plastic wrap and find something heavy to flatten it out with. I'm using my small cast iron pan here. You don't need to use a lot of force here, you just need to let the weight of the pan do the work for you. And also watch out for those poor little fingers. You don't want to smash those, do you? We're shooting for about a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch thick piece of steak. Repeat with the other piece and bring them over to your dredging station. Crack in 2 eggs to a pie plate or wide bowl and mix together. Next, take 2 cups of pork rind panko and place onto a plate. Crack a little black pepper into this, and garlic powder is a nice addition to this as well, but I skipped it this time. Okay, for a dredge, you want to have a dry hand and a wet hand. I need you to pick which is which now. This is important, you do not want to screw this up. Now that you've done that, take a piece of your flattened steak and place it into your egg mixture and coat both sides. Next, take this and place it onto your pork crumbs. Grab a small handful and throw them on the top side to evenly coat and firmly press it in. Set aside and repeat with the rest, and now we can get started with frying. Are you ready to pan fry? Are you? Good! Grab a large cast iron pan and add in your rendered steak and bacon fat. This isn't quite enough to pan fry, so add in about 4 tablespoons of butter as well. Turn the heat to medium-high and let this get melty. Once all of your butter is melted, carefully place your pieces of breaded steak into the pan. Cook for 2 to 4 minutes per side depending on how done you want the steak to be. I let mine sit for 2 minutes per side and it was medium rare and on its way to medium. If a lot of smoke starts to come up from the pan, turn the heat down because that means the butter is starting to burn. After a lot of time has finished, place the pieces onto a paper towel lined plate to allow to drain. Salt these immediately while they're still hot. Alright, so we want to serve up these crispy steaks with a full breakfast of fried eggs, bacon, coffee, and gravy. It's finally time to dig in. You know, this is such a simple procedure, and it takes the food that I find most monotonous from time to time and just turns it into something special. Like I said in the intro, the gravy isn't perfect, but it still tastes great with the fried steak dipped into it. I think the most natural place to start making a breakfast bake would be to make some bacon. While you're doing something natural, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel. Actually, I think eggs would be the hallmark to anything breakfasty. But we want to make the excellent choice of not cooking those too early. Anyways, place 1 pound of bacon onto some foil or parchment paper and into an oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 13 to 15 minutes. So when it comes to memory cards, files can corrupt. You know, corrupted like the long, elaborate shot I did to tell you to take a bowl and add in 4 ounces of ground pork rinds, 4 eggs, and 1 teaspoon of baking powder into a bowl and mix. Mine were spicy as fuck. We cooked the bacon already, right? Oh, yeah, we did. Once it's cooled, take your bacon pan and pour in all of that savory bacon grease into it. We're going to use it to fry up some eggs. You can use butter to fry up your eggs if you want to, but I think bacon grease is a much better option. To fry the basic egg, I suggest using some sort of nonstick pan or a very well-seasoned cast iron pan. Place it over medium heat with your grease and let that start to shimmer. Crack your egg into the pan, and I like to take my spatula and kind of poke holes into the thick egg whites. I don't know if this actually does anything, but I enjoy doing it. Take your spatula and scrape up that slippery little egg and give it a careful flip. I'm going for a really runny yolk in mine, so I'm only going to cook these for 2 to 3 minutes. Once they're all cooked up, let's grab another pan and plop in 1 pound of breakfast sausage. I have this pan over medium-high heat for the record. Start breaking it up with a spatula, and optionally add in 2 teaspoons of hot sauce. I only did this since I already have a spicy base, so don't feel obligated, but it is really tasty. I also went ahead and added a preemptive half teaspoon of black pepper. Once the sausage is broken up and cooked all the way through, remove half of it and set aside. Now, we want to make our sausage gravy by adding in a half pint of heavy cream and 2 ounces of cream cheese. Bring this to a boil and reduce the heat to medium. I went ahead and added an additional 2 teaspoons of hot sauce just because I'm feeling muy caliente. Stir this until thickened. I like to be able to see that creamy river part when my spatula goes through it. Taste it and hit it with a little more black pepper if you feel like it needs more. Okay, all the components are finally done. I greased down an 8x11 baking dish with unsalted butter. I probably should have went a touch heavier just because things did stick, but a little scraping of the spatula did help to get the food out. It's not like it was permanently stuck. Speaking of scraping, scrape out your pork rind mixture and spread evenly. Place this into an oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 minutes just to give it a little par bake. While that's in, let's tend to our bacon. I was worried that if I left the bacon in full strips, it'd be hard to cut through, so I cut mine into quarter sections. It worked out like I wanted it to. Alright, so once the crust has been par baked, use some uncorrupted footage to prove that you've put on about 3/4 of your sausage gravy. I follow this up by layering on my fried eggs, then the bacon. Since this obviously wasn't going to be good enough as it is, I decided to shred over about 3 ounces of smoked cheddar. And finally, I finished up with my reserved breakfast sausage. Place this back into your still hot oven for 15 to 20 minutes, or until the cheese is slightly browned. Here's some chive slicing ASMR for you. Alright, the timer's up. Pull this opulent thing out, and feel free to go ahead and dig in if you want your face to melt off, but I highly suggest you let this cool for about 10 minutes. You should be able to get about 9 normal servings or 5 large servings from this thing. Now, I know this isn't the fanciest thing I've ever made, but I'm probably more excited about this than I should be. Alright guys, I'm not gonna lie to you. I was really craving a breakfast burrito from Taco Bell, so I thought instead of just, saying screw this diet, I'm gonna just kind of make something that's similar.
So if you've ever had a breakfast burrito from Taco Bell, you'll know that the eggs inside of it are probably fake, but they're very soft and they have like a cheese sauce in them. And it just makes it a really good experience to eat with, a chewy tortilla. That's why I decided to scramble my eggs in a double boiler. I didn't add butter to this, but looking back at it, you should probably add a couple tablespoons of butter to this as well, just to keep it from sticking to the pan so bad. So whenever I'm scrambling my eggs in any way I do it, I usually just add black pepper to it. I don't like to add salt at the beginning because it seems to make the eggs a little more firm for some reason, and I'm not looking for anything firm about these eggs. I want these to be almost juicy with cheese. So we have this double boiler set up here because it's going to help us get a smaller curd, and it's going to keep it from overcooking, and it's not going to cook it nearly as fast as it would in a normal pan. And that's really the only reason why we're doing this. You can do this in a normal pan if you want to, but if you want to follow what I'm doing, just use a double boiler. I wanted to add some American cheese and some bacon. I tore up the American cheese just to give it a chance to kind of emulsify a little bit easier in there. If you put just whole slices in there, it tends to take a lot longer than it does if you break it up. There's also pre-cooked bacon. Feel free to fry your own bacon if you want like crispier bacon. But if you've ever had the Taco Bell bacon breakfast burrito, you'll know that it's pre-cooked crumbles. And yeah, just kind of set it aside. It should stay warm while we get our tortilla ready. And for the tortilla, I suggest getting a sheet pan lined with a silpat, but you can always use parchment paper on here if you want to. I have 3 ounces of Parmesan cheese that I've grated myself, and I just kind of, spread it out into a circle. That's why I say use a silpat. Some of them have this nice guide to make, just the perfect circle in there. I threw mine in the oven at 350 degrees for about 5 minutes, and then once it was out, I put my eggs on there and folded it as best as I could like a burrito. Only went in for 5 minutes because if you leave it in there much longer, it starts to get hardened really quick and you'll end up with just a cracker. You won't be able to fold it like this at all, so just keep an eye on it as well because some ovens are hotter than others, and I'm also using a high convection oven. So once you get it rolled up, you can keep it as it is. I decided to place mine back in the oven for a few more minutes. I thought it'd brown up a little bit more, but I think it'd take a lot more longer than what I think, just because, it has a lot of liquid in the inside of it. But either way, if it's done, it's done. I threw mine in some foil wrap just to kind of give me an authentic breakfast burrito kind of feel. I just went somewhere and got it. All right, let's give this thing a taste. And yeah, it's pretty much exactly what I wanted. It's a lot of cheese, I will say. Hey there, my media friends. So what is that? Little Grobble's gourmet corned beef? What are you going to do with that? Well, today we're going to be making some corned beef and Swiss egg bites. Simply remove the corned beef from your packaging and make sure to keep this little packet of like seeds and stuff and whatever. And if you're curious to know what's in this little packet, it's stuff like coriander, cloves, black pepper, coriander, some more cloves, probably a little oregano. It's mostly coriander. That's okay, because that's the flavor. To your Instant Pot, go ahead and add about 2 cups of water, and then get that thing slid on, make sure it's locked, and set to pressure cook for 43 minutes. Release the steam, and open her up. Feels like I'm looking into an abyss. But what comes out of it is anything but abysmal. Take your corned beef, give it a nice rough chop. And this is definitely way too much corned beef for just me, so I'm going to share it with someone. Yeah, just get a piece. Get it right there. Yeah, I know it's hot. It's very hot. There you go. Anyways, we're going to use about half of this corned beef. Go ahead and keep chopping this until it's a finer texture. So you can go ahead and put the rest of this up because you will definitely be snacking on that in a bit. Now, I'm going to get some Swiss cheese. You can tell it's Swiss because there's no holes in the Swiss cheese for some reason. I don't know why. But you're going to want to grate about 3 ounces of it. Next up, crack 3 eggs into a bowl. Add in about half of your cheese, a big pinch of salt, a little over a 1/4 cup of sour cream, and then finally all of your corned beef. Now, grab a whisk and set your arm to hyperdrive. Once that's all mixed up, you can let your arm cool down and reset because that was a lot. Now, let's grab a non-stick muffin tin, or what I think is a non-stick muffin tin, and put all of our batter in it. You should have enough for about 6 egg bites. And before we cook these, you're going to take the rest of your not-so-holy Swiss cheese and place it on top of each egg bite. Now, place this into an oven at 350 degrees for about 15 to 16 minutes, or until they have risen slightly. Once they're out, let them cool for about 5 minutes, and then begin the arduous process of taking them out. Remember how I said this pan was non-stick? Yeah, that was a lie. Just assume that all pans are not actually non-stick. You should have greased this down with just a little bit of butter to be able to get these out with ease. Luckily, with a little finesse, I was able to get all of these out without too much damage. Since the cheese on top kind of crisped up a little bit, I had to give it some force to cut it in half to give you a cross section. Hey y'all, this is Reed, aka CarnivorousChef. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make stuffed carnivore crepes. One day in the early fall, I decided to make myself some tacos and just winged the tortilla recipe. What came out was light, thin, and a little pliable. Ever since then, I've wondered what to do with them, and I came across a cookbook with stuffed crepes, and it culminated in the perfect idea. There's a sweet and savory crepe recipe in this video, so be sure to check out the whole thing to see what I did. For the crepe batter, we need to get it pretty thin, just like a real crepe batter. This is 3 ounces of ground pork rinds, 6 eggs, 3 tablespoons of water, and 3 tablespoons of heavy cream. Give this a solid whisking. It should look rather runny. And then let it rest for about 15 minutes. We need the pork rinds to hydrate so we can readjust our liquids if we need to. Mine stiffened up pretty well, so I added another 3 tablespoons of cream and 3 tablespoons of water. Give it a second good whisking and it should be good to go. Set aside for later. When I think crepes, I think whipped cream. So how about a chipotle maple whipped cream? You can keep your whipped cream stable by using gelatin. Just mix 1 teaspoon of dry gelatin and 3 teaspoons of really hot water and mix until dissolved. This is really only if you want to have whipped cream a couple days from now because it will deflate with time. Now, you can whip your cream any way you want, but today I'll be using an immersion blender. For this recipe, you're going to need 1 cup of heavy cream, there we go, a 1/4 cup of erythritol, and feel free to use whatever sweetener you like best, a 1/4 teaspoon of chipotle powder, and 1 teaspoon of maple extract. Using an immersion blender, blend on high until soft peaks start to form. This took me about 2 minutes. Once this happens, pour in 2 teaspoons of your prepared gelatin, if you want a stable whipped cream that is, and blend on high again until stiff peaks have formed. It should look a little something like this. Now, place a gallon Ziploc bag into a pint glass and pour your whipped cream into this. This will be used later for piping. Store in the fridge until you're ready for it. We can't have stuffed crepes without a filling too, so let's get some cheesecake vibes going on. For the sweet filling, you're going to need 4 ounces of room temp cream cheese, a 1/4 teaspoon of chipotle powder, 1 teaspoon of maple extract, and 2 tablespoons of erythritol. Use a rubber spatula to mix and mash this together into a paste. Take as much time as needed to make sure everything is incorporated. Once it's well combined, set it aside at room temp. For our crepes, we need to be using low heat and something non-stick. Place 1 tablespoon of butter into your pan and begin coating the whole thing. The butter is here for insurance that nothing will stick, along with a little added flavor. Alright, let's pretend that this isn't the 4th crepe I've made and pour in 2/3 of a cup of your batter and begin to smooth it out. You basically want to cover the entirety of the flat part of your pan. Cook this for about 1 to 2 minutes or until your top side is starting to dry out. If you're feeling bold and willing to make a couple of mistakes, flip that bad boy like a real chef. Place this on a paper towel lined plate, ensuring to separate the others with paper towels as well. If you want to be a smart chef and have your crepes look perfect, slide it cooked side down onto a plate and then flip the crepe over into the pan. Alright, let's plate this up. Take a crepe and turn it rough side up. Grab about half of your cream cheese mixture and begin to spread out to the edges. If you left this cream cheese out long enough, it should be rather easy to spread. Mine was a little bit difficult because it was cheap brand, I believe, but it's hard to tell. Maybe buy a higher quality brand or even some whipped cream cheese to make this easier for you. Fold this in half once, and then twice, and now you have a stuffed crepe. Grab your bag of maple chipotle whipped cream and cut the corner of it off. Start placing dabs of it all over and stop once you realize that you're not an artist. sprinkle with a little extra chipotle powder for color. Now, we can't have dessert breakfast without savory breakfast, right? Let's make a chive whipped cream by adding 1 cup of heavy cream, an 1/8 teaspoon of garlic powder, and a few twists of freshly cracked black pepper. Blend this on high with an immersion blender until stiff peaks of foam. Now, fold in, not blend in, 2 tablespoons of finely chopped chives. Place into a Ziploc bag and set in the fridge until we're ready for it. I think bacon and eggs are going to complement this chive whipped cream nicely. So let's dice up a strip of bacon and start to cook it just before it gets crispy. Reduce your heat to low and discard most of your bacon grease. Replace that with 1 tablespoon of butter and slowly stir in 3 eggs and then season with salt and pepper. Cook this slowly until your eggs are at 80% cooked and then remove from the heat. The cliche of if it looks cooked in the pan, then it'll be overcooked on the plate is 100% true, especially for eggs. Alright, same procedure as before. Spread out your eggs to the edge on your crepe and then fold twice. Now you should definitely add some sort of cheese here. For whatever reason, it just happened to slip my mind and I missed it. It's a required optional ingredient. Now, cut the corner of your chive whipped cream bag and pipe it on. Maybe even throw in a few more chives. Alright, savory first. Well, I mean, it's good. It really is. The whipped cream is missing something, though. Oh, salt. Just salt the top of it for a much better flavor experience. Alright, now let's taste the dessert one. It looks very promising. I actually had to take a moment for this one because it's so good. It took me a minute to remember that this was a carnivore dish. Honestly, I think this will be a new quote-unquote cheat meal for me for a long time to come.
You know, I think it's about time we learned how to make breakfast sausage finally. No more worrying about what's in it. And before we get started, just give me 1 second. That's what I think about your dextrose. Alright, for this sausage you're going to need some crushed red pepper, dried thyme, dried rosemary, dried sage, salt, pepper, and some ground pork. Alright, let's get started by getting our spices into the bowl. We'll start out with about 2 teaspoons of sage, 1.5 teaspoons of dried thyme, about 1/2 teaspoon of dried rosemary, about 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, 2 teaspoons of salt, and about 1/2 teaspoon of crushed red pepper. Let's give that a little mix. Now we can take our fork, slap that into the bowl, and then we can just give it a nice slap. Alright, this is our finished breakfast sausage. It should smell just like breakfast sausage. If you know what that smells like, it smells pretty damn good. Let's see what we can do with this. Alright, they do look like little burger patties, but they sure don't smell like it. I gotta say, that's breakfast sausage. Now, since you know how to make this, let's make an actual breakfast with it, so. Alright, let's start off by taking about 4 ounces of our newly made breakfast sausage, throwing it into a cold pan, and turning it on medium heat. As soon as you hear it start sizzling, let's take our spatula and start breaking this off. I've made this before in my biscuits and gravy video. What I'm making here is the sausage gravy, and I'm going to be putting on top of eggs. Once it's nicely brown, let's add an extra 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper to this, about a cup of heavy cream, followed by 1 ounce of cream cheese. Basically what you want to do here is take this and reduce it until it's thickened. And the cream cheese will help this get there a lot quicker than just the cream by itself. So if you want to omit the cream cheese, feel free to. It's not the biggest part of the recipe.
Alright, once it's thickened, you can go ahead and turn the heat off. Mine's pretty thickened. It's a very gravy-like texture. Feel free to taste this for seasoning. I just tasted mine. I think it's good on salt, pretty good on pepper. Add a little bit of extra black pepper at the end. Let's just get this out so we can make the eggs real quick. Alrighty, let's get this thing made. So obviously just start with your sausage patty. Top it with your scrambled eggs. Spoon over some of your gravy. And then finish with some black pepper.